Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a really easy, fast, and very beginner friendly upcycle for you. I am incredibly cozy in this ginormous red hoodie and I love it, but it's not really the look I'm going for. Recently I went shopping and I tried on a new hoodie. I hardly ever buy new clothes, but I just wanted to see what makes a hoodie great these days. So I tried on this one and I really like the fit. It's kind of wide like this, but shorter, still really roomy, but not quite so enormous. But that one was, it was more than $50. And then when I looked online for similar ones, I found this Nike one for $85. And I just, first I don't want to buy new. Second, I don't want to spend $85 on a hoodie. And third, I definitely don't want a swoosh on my hoodie. So instead of buying one of those, of course, I went thrifting, and the hardest part was to find a hoodie that was just plain with no emblems on it, no initials, definitely no swooshes on them. So I found this one and I love it. It's super cozy and soft, and I'm going to be really happy with this. So the process today is going to be very beginner friendly. So if you are new to sewing, new to upcycling, I'm going to take you through each step. And you're going to be able to take a big oversized hoodie and just make it a little bit more flattering, a little bit more current. So I've got my little scrap of soap and I'm just going to mark just beside the pocket where I want my hoodie to finish. For me, it's about there, and I'll have the band sitting a little bit below that. But you could take yours as short as you want. You could go really cropped with this. It's the exact same technique. And I think I'd want the sleeve to end about there and the cuff coming after it. It'll still have the look of a very oversized hoodie. It'll just be a little more reasonable, more flattering, that I can throw on with jeans or sweatpants and go out and not look like I'm drowning in my hoodie. First thing I'm going to do is cut off the cuffs and the waistband. I'm going to keep the cuff and the band. I'll be sewing them on later. Once I've got that cut off, then I'll be removing the pocket very carefully. I don't want to make holes in the pocket itself because I'll be sewing the pocket back on. So the pocket is the piece I really want to protect. So if that all sounds good to you, then let's get busy. I just need to cut below the little seam to remove the cuffs and the waistband. And now I also want to cut just the bottom of the pocket. Rather than having to remove all these stitches, I can just cut off that bottom edge of the pocket. It just saves me a little bit of stitch ripping. And now with my seam ripper, I just need to remove the stitches there and across the top and that little side. Now, can you see there's a bar tack in here? This very tight little zigzag. Those can be tricky to remove, but slide the blade of your seam ripper under, cut a bunch of stitches at once. Then check it out on the back, and you'll see that same little zigzag stitch. And here on the back, I'm not as concerned about damaging the fabric because I know this is going to get cut off. But I really want to make sure that I'm careful with the fabric on the pocket. Another way to make sure that you're safe, that you're not damaging the fabric, is just to separate out the layers like that and cut the stitches in between. But definitely try to get as much of that bar tack out first as you can. There. Okay, so that's one section out. I'll do the same across the top and the other side. So this is my 6-inch wide ruler, and there's my mark. And so that makes it nice and easy. I'm cutting off just a smidge more than 6 inches all the way across. And then while I'm here, I want to find the center of the front and the center of the back. So I'll take it this way and bring the two side seams together. And I'm going to put a tiny notch just with the point of my scissors right at the center front. And same thing at the center back. Good. And now for the sleeves. I'll put both sleeves together. Make sure they're nicely lined up. Here's my mark where I want the sleeve to end, and then that's where the cuff will end. So really this one doesn't matter too much. That's the one I want. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of seam allowance here So I'll put the 1/2 inch mark of my ruler right on that line, and I'll go straight across. I can curve a little bit as I get to the bottom, just so I end up with a right angle here at that edge. This is already a right angle at the top edge. Good. I'll just try it on, make sure I'm happy with the length before I put the pocket back on. Well, I definitely like it better. In fact, I kind of love it just as it is. And I could just hem it and leave it like that, or maybe even put just an elastic, but I've got the waistband, and so I might as well put it to use. When I put the waistband around myself, it's really big. So I want to get rid of some of it, but I don't want it tight. If I look at that Nike one, it sort of fits the model sort of loosely around the hip, and I like the look of that. So I'll stick a pin there where it's just kind of loosely around my hip, and then I have to decide if I'm going to be taking any off the width of the whole thing. Should I take some off the width of the body? Now to do that, I have to turn it inside out. So now with it inside out, it's much easier to pin away excess. But I still want it to look wide. I like that look. I want it to look wide and sort of shorter than it was. So I'll take that right through the sleeve. Not the easiest thing to pin your own sleeve. Okay, I'll just pin one and make them the same, and I think that that is working. I think that gives me a nice bit of width around there, but just a little more trim. Somehow I didn't film the part where I actually cut the side seams, so I don't want anybody to be confused, so I'm going to recreate that part. This is my finished hoodie though, so I'm not actually going to cut it, but I had a line of pins like that. So I just can replace the pins with a little mark from my little scrap of soap. And then I can just connect that. And where you want to turn the corner is right at the seam. You don't want to turn the corner up into the sleeve or in the body. Turn the corner right at the seam. Okay. Alrighty, so where my pins were is where I want to sew. So I would just cut a finger width outside of that line, just to give yourself a little bit of seam allowance, and then you're good. Now before I sew the side seams, I want to put that pocket back on. It's going to be much easier to put the pocket back on when I have a flat piece to work with. I already have a notch in the center front. To be able to line the pocket up nicely, I want to also put a notch in the center front of the pocket. Good. So I've lined up those 2 notches. Tuck in that seam allowance again as it was. And then I just want to sew right in the same seam line as the original sewing. So I'll sew the 2 sides across the bottom and then just across the top. And yes, make sure you're putting this onto the front. I have had students, and I've even done it myself, where we've sewn the pocket to the back. Don't do that. Alrighty, so down, across, and up, and then I'll sew straight across there. Okay, so now I'm just going to be sewing right in that same line as the original stitching. It's important to have a good matching thread here. Straight across the bottom. It's good to have a lot of pins for this situation, because as soon as you pick the hoodie up off the table, that pocket's going to shift around on you, so lots of pins are helpful. For this whole project, I'm going to use a regular universal needle and a regular straight stitch. And then straight across the top. Okay, fantastic. So that looks good like that. Just nice and close to the edge of the pocket. Looks good. Good. Okay, side seams. So now I want to sew this at the 15 line or 5/8 line, just so I have got a little seam allowance there. And you could certainly put more pins than I have here, whatever you're comfortable with. But I wouldn't recommend putting fewer. I'll sew both side seams like that, and then I'll just try it on and make sure I'm happy with it before I finish my edges. So it looks great on, I'm really happy with it, and so now I'm going to serge my edges. But knits don't fray, I just like the finished look of a serged edge. But you can either just leave it, or you could sew a second row of straight stitching, or you could zigzag your edges. Okay, now we're ready to put the ribbing back on, and then that's it. So to be able to sew that seam in the ribbing, I'm going to need to get inside the ribbing like this. And then I can measure my 4 inches and cut. So I measured in 4 inches and cut. I'm looking at the cuff and it's a little bit big too. So I still want it to come down onto my hand. I don't want a tight cuff there. About like that is good. So I'll take about 1 inch off the ribbing. So again, I'm going to go inside the ribbing like that. And I'll put both together. Good. Also at the 15 line or 5/8 line, I do want a bit of seam allowance on here. If it gets stuck at the beginning, just lift up and give it a little wiggle. And I'll sew the cuffs in the same way. I'm putting a slightly smaller seam allowance on the cuff, just because it does look a bit small. I don't want it to get too skinny. So then that seam, I just push open and then just fold that ribbing back up. And now the notches that I put at the bottom edge, together with the side seams, that basically means that this bottom edge is quarter marked, meaning that it's divided into 4 equal sections. And now I just want to quarter mark the ribbing as well. So I've got the 2 side seams. So if I bring those together, little snip at the center front and center back, it doesn't matter at all which is front and back, but now this is quarter marked. So with the hoodie inside out, I'll put the ribbing inside there and bring the side seam to the side seam. The folded edge is going in first and all of the raw edges are coming together. The center notch to the center. Sometimes you might have to do more stretching, but that's coming together just perfectly. So that tells me that this hoodie is going to hang more or less straight. The ribbing is just bringing in the body just a little bit, not a lot. Center back to center back. And then pin in between. I'm going to pin the cuffs at the same time. So again, I just want to push that seam allowance open and flat and fold the cuff back up. Good. And the sleeve is inside out and the fold goes in first so that it's right side together and all 3 raw edges together the same way. So this takes a little bit more stretch. Stretch, grab the middle and pin. Okay, and let's go back to the machine. Now I'm just sewing all the way around the bottom edge at the edge of my presser foot. I have to just stretch it out a little bit as I go, so that that fullness is evenly distributed. I'm making sure my edges stay together and that it's staying where I pinned it. Okay, so the waistband is on and I'm going to do the same kind of thing on the cuff. When I'm working with a little circle like this, I don't like to put the circle down where I can't see what's going on. And this circle is too small to fit over my free arm. So I like to have the circle facing up and get my presser foot right inside the circle. And there's a little bit more stretch happening on the cuff than there was on the waistband. That ribbing has to stretch to fit the bottom edge of the sleeve. So I'll stretch, make sure my edges stay together, and sew it in that stretched out position. Awesome. So the cuff is on. There's no puckers or anything in the sleeve. It all just went in smooth. Good. And so now I'm going to finish the edges. So you can either do a second row of straight stitch, you can zigzag the edges, or you can use your serger. So I'm going to use the serger. Overlap where I started and then chain off. You can definitely live without a serger, but it's a really nice thing to have if you plan to sew a lot. So you can see why I wanted that notch to be small, right? If it was bigger than my seam, that's where the hole would be. Okay, I'm done and I think I love it. So let me show you. It's all done and I absolutely love it. I feel so cozy still, but I feel like it's a lot more flattering now and a lot more current. So I hope that that encourages you to go out thrifting instead of buying new. Just customize the fit of your hoodie. I hope you found that pretty beginner friendly and that it gives you confidence to try upcycling your own thrifted finds. I think that customizing the fit of a hoodie is a great place to start if you're new to upcycling, and hopefully it just gets you hooked on thrifting and on sewing. So if you want to join me for more upcycling adventures, then please make sure to hit subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I post videos every week of different projects, different skills, different techniques, and I'd love to have you along for all of those. So until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.